Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of EOXS's Stories on Steel. This is a steel industry podcast featuring the big names of the business and the advice/stories they've accrued over their years as insiders. Steel has been a vital component in American life for well over a century, and the men and women who've helped it flourish are a diverse group of innovators full of interesting tales. We hope to share some of said tales here with you today. Thanks again to EOXS for providing this platform. In addition to this show, they are bringing businesses online by providing a standardized digital workspace for all your steel-related needs. Today, we welcome longtime industry veteran of multiple different fields, one of the more seasoned names we've had on the show in a while. So please join me in welcoming to the studio, Mr. Rob Moeck. Rob, thank you so much for giving us your time today. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, we got to talking a little bit before the show got going proper, so I know you are a very fascinating fella. You've got a lot of really fun stories, and not all of them have to be about steel, so we'll get into some of them. But if you could give us a brief primer on how you found your way into the industry. Was it a long-held dream? Was it a sudden opportunity? How did you find yourself there?
It was weird because when I went to college, I was my plan was to be a lawyer, and I kind of lost my way in college. Ended up joining the Navy for 8 years, and was in the nuclear power program on a submarine. And then when I got out, I was looking for more of a tech job, and my wife wanted to be closer to her parents in LA. So her dad, who owned a steel company, offered me a job in the shipping and receiving department as kind of a placeholder. We had an informal agreement that would only be a year, and I would use the time to be able to interview and to get a more technical job. And I found out I really liked what I did, and I liked the company, and I ended up staying there for 20 years. I ended up becoming the CEO there. So it was not a plan. It's kind of happened oddly. I didn't think of myself as a businessman ever, and yet now here I sit as a CEO of another company and kind of feel like I am a business guy.
Yeah, I never thought of myself as a businessman either, and I still don't. That's why I'm here. That's a very interesting career path, if you don't mind my saying. How much pre-law did you experience before you decided to make the switch to the military?
The military was more, I didn't like who I had become. I was in a fraternity and my grades had slipped, and I was all about the social element of it. So I decided to take I was just joined the military for 2 years to get the GI Bill, get a break, and come back more focused and finish up school. So I didn't expect to do 8 years in the military, but they kept having me take a test and move up, and I got promoted quickly, and I became an instructor for 2 years while I was there. So it was a bunch of different jobs that ended up making the 8 years pretty rewarding. It was kind of brutal on the op tempo, and I got married while I was in the military. So it was at the time, at the 8 year point, you either re-enlist for 4 more, which you might as well do the full 20 at that point, or you get out. And that was the tough part, was making that decision.
Yeah, I can. Speaking from personal experience, my little brother's currently on his first deployment in Okinawa. We got to talking about that a little bit before the show started. Did you find that the military life spoke to you the longer you got, the more years you got under your belt? Because I know that initial time can be pretty jarring.
Again, the nuclear program's a little bit different, and submarines are really different than the rest of the military. There was no, I mean, you told the captain and the XO, yes, sir, no, sir, and maybe some of the other senior officers, but the junior guys were, get out of my way, leave me alone. So it was more of a close-knit working group than very military. The 4 years I was on a submarine, we never had a personnel inspection.
Well, here's the thing. My logic is like out on the ground, you know what's trying to get you. If you're in a submarine, there's a lot of things in that water we don't know about. We have not explored all of it, so that would be what scares me if I was down there.
It the thing I really took away from the military was the leadership. I was blessed by having great leaders. There were a couple of leaders that were lacking, but I think it contrasted with the great leadership that I was able to witness. And it helped me understand, how do you get 130 guys on a boat, all from different walks of life, all there for different reasons, all working in the same direction, and excel at it. And I mentioned our specialty was special ops insertion. So you're taking these highly trained special ops guys. Their mission would be destroyed if they saw us inserting them off of some coast. So you have to be able to get up to the surface quietly, discharge them off the boat quietly and accurately, and then get away. And if we were seen, they're going to get killed. So it's a different way of approaching things.
Did you ever think about officer candidacy school while you were in there? Or?
Probably would have been the next step if I stayed in.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
As much as we could definitely go into that, and we'll definitely circle back in our time. Would love to talk about those leadership skills you just brought up. How great of a carryover were the skills that you learned in that leadership role in the military to when you transitioned into steel?
So my father-in-law was in the Coast Guard, and he set me up the first week I was there. He took me around and told me what to get done, and and I got back my group of guys and said, okay, you go do this, you go do that, and I'm expecting it to be done because that's the way it was on the submarine. And the next day, nothing was done. And he always reminded me that they're not the same guys that I had on the submarine. So I had to relearn how to talk to people. Also, in the military, the more colorful words you put together as adjectives and nouns to get people to do things is the importance of what it is. You can never tell somebody to pick up a box. You had to expound on what type of box it was and who they were and where you wanted to move to in very colorful language. So I had to relearn that. Civilian workforces aren't appreciative of getting cussed at and sworn to quite often. And the jokes and the acronyms that I had for everything didn't go well. So it took a couple of years for me to find my stride of what leadership really was. What did I learn? Why am I not? How does it translate to the civilian sector? And then I think I became a better leader because I was able to get rid of some of the more blunter parts of how we did things on the submarine.
So, boiling that down a little bit, can you identify the differences in commanding respect in a military environment as opposed to a business environment?
It's almost the same, really, is you have to have empathy for what you're asking them to get done. You may not have to do it. You may not have to go clean a bilge, and you may not have to go, sweep a floor or take a machine apart and do a clean and inspect on it. But if you don't understand what that's doing for them and you don't understand what it might be taking away from them, they don't respect you for that. And it's how you treat them, how you ask the questions of what's going on. We had one chief of the boat. He's the head enlisted guy on any naval vessel. He's called the qoute. And he started calling it, the submarine, the battle wagon, and we got to clean it up. And we were all like, yeah, battle wagon. And he had all these little things that he would do. And he left, and the guy who took over for him said, okay, clean up the battle wagon. And we're all like, screw you, dude. Don't tell us what to do. And it really was the first time, same words, same people, just a different guy in a different way, because he didn't feel sincere about what he was asking us to do. And that's always stuck with me, that how can one guy use the exact same language with the exact same people and get a different response? His sincerity wasn't in it. He didn't really care. He was just going through the motions.
Well, it's good that you recognize that authenticity, and I feel like that carries over no matter what industry you're involved in, and I think people resonate with that just because in a way, this is a we're all in this together situation most of the time. I could be speaking from lack of experience there, but
I can't drive a truck. I might be able to, but I'm not a good driver, so I don't think that's
you helped with a nuclear submarine. I bet you could figure it out.
Yeah, but I was more on the gas side than the driving side. But
I'm trying to minimize how impressive it is. I'm not going to allow it here. All right.
Here, what we do today is, we make building products and deliver them to our customers. If my truck driver can't deliver them to the customers, we can't do anything. So it doesn't matter how great I am at what I do. If I could be the best CEO in the world, it minimizes it if you can't get a truck driver to deliver things. You can't get the truck loaded. If you can't get the guy to cut the skids to load the product on it. So everybody here has an equally important job. They're just differently compensated for the experiences, basically, is the way I look at it. So we're all tied together.
Outside together. I think that's a very succinct way of putting it. Going back more to the infrastructure of steel, we communicated a little bit, or you communicated with RT a little bit over email, talking about some of your experiences. I see you have a wide range of experiences with some of the more international milling operations, like in Asia, parts of Europe. What was it like going from having to learn a lot about people with all different types of backgrounds in a military. I promise we'll get off the military.
That's all right.
But what was it like having to wrangle a bunch of very passionate people from different backgrounds all over the country to dealing with things on an international scale?
Well, part of being in the Navy that's different than a lot of the other branches of service is that you get to travel internationally. And I was on the nuclear side. There's three jobs. I was an electrician. There's a machinist mate, which is more like a mechanic with pipes and valves, and then there's an electronics technician, which is more of the processors and the smaller electronic stuff. So we would have to bring on shore power wherever we went, whatever port we pulled into, whether it was Hong Kong or Dubai, Bahrain, wherever you were, you had to pull on shore power. And so we had to deal with the locals who were providing the ship services that here would be more of a union job. And so we got to know those guys differently in all the different countries that we went to. And you kind of understood that you all had a job to do. You might not speak the same language, but it was different. And then on the boat, you had people who were from all sorts of different educational backgrounds, religious backgrounds, upbringings. Some were just their first time off the farm. Some of them had grown up in New York, and so you had a wide range, and you all had to find a commonality in what you were trying to get done, just like in any business. What's the common goal? How are we going to accomplish it together? And you have to put some of those differences aside. And it was, it's a hard environment. 130 guys, you're underway for weeks at a time. Not a whole lot of recreation on a submarine to do, and friction builds up, and it's the way that the leaders had to find ways to alleviate that friction quickly and not let it boil over to our jobs.
I think, again, the ability to communicate with people is very important, and that can serve you as much in life as anything else. Rob, you seem like a very direct person, so I'm actually going to be more direct with you than I've been with any guest we've had so far on the show. How do you sell steel?
You don't sell steel. You sell a service. Steel is a commodity. My steel is the same as my competitor's steel, is the same as everybody's steel. There's nothing different in steel. No one's figured their way to market steel yet. So whether you're buying it from California Steel Industries, U.S. Steel, Nucor, to name some of the domestic mills, it's all the same. You don't look at your car and say, oh my God, this has Nucor steel in it. You don't even know. So the end user looking at a washing machine, looking at your roof, looking at any component that you have, you don't care where the steel came from as a consumer. So the people who we sell to right now, it's a buildings product company. I sell to roofers who are going to put a new roof on, and there's a lot of metal that goes into that. They don't care where the metal comes from. They care how I get it delivered to you. So when we look at securing steel, we're not really trying to push how we sell steel. We're pushing the services that we add to the steel.
So in a way you're marketing the manufacturing just as much as you're more so than you're marketing the actual commodity.
Right. We have a slogan: quality people, quality products. That's what we sell.
Okay, so what makes quality people?
What you say you're going to do, you do. If you're going to deliver, if I say I'm going to deliver something tomorrow, we're going to deliver it tomorrow. If I can't, I'm going to call you up and say, hey, Kevin, I'm really sorry. I know I promised you this. It's not going to happen. And you're going to scream and yell and be upset, but I'd rather have you do that than wait tomorrow and have a crew sitting on a roof waiting for something to show up. That's not going to happen. So we honor our promises, and it's me honoring the promises to the employees honoring the promises to the customer. We have internal customers. The purchasing guy has to honor the commitment he made to getting material here for the guys to make the products that they need to get made. The maintenance guy has to honor his commitment to making sure that the equipment's ready to run for the guys who need to make it, to get it to the customer. So we all have a job to do, and we all have promises that we made.
In your experience in the industry, has sticking to those promises been challenging for some of your competitors and contemporaries, or is everybody pretty above board?
I like to think that that's our competitive edge, is that we hold that as the most valuable through our dealings. We're compared here. We're compared often to a few of the other what we call quality suppliers, and not just the people trying to put out cheap product. And the input prices are all the same. It's really just how you go about servicing people, and that's what you're really buying. You're buying a service. You're not buying the steel from me. You're because it's the same. I mean, we make corner bead might be the thing you're most familiar with. It's something that we make. It goes into the corner of sheetrock when you're building a room. So you don't care where that came from as a consumer when you're buying it. You just, when you go to the store, it needs to be on the shelf. If it's not on the shelf, you're upset. So if you're upset, then my customer, the seller, is upset because he's not making a sale. So how do you hold everybody accountable to getting that done? And that's what we do. And so we think that's our competitive edge. That's what we try to sell, is that, hey, we're going to be there for you. We're going to create the service and the quality that other people can't match.
All right. So market the people over the commodity for the most part. As long as those people are of a very high caliber, they can be trusted. Trustworthiness. That seems to be a common message that drives you and has driven your journey in this industry. And this industry is currently seeing a lot of rapid changes. There's the methods by which people are procuring steel have changed in different ways. Do you recognize any pain points in the industry supply chain? You know, is if removing the human element of people being trustworthy to get things done on a timely manner, is there any other problems that you foresee?
Um, yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years. It seems like a long time, but a lot of the people who I know and who train me have been doing this for 40, 50 years in some cases. I think what we're seeing lately is artificial stimulants into a commodity market that are creating price and supply issues that aren't generally seen. I don't want to get political and talk about the politics of whether it's good or not, but the tariffs have created supply issues at certain times, sudden, how do I want to put this? Sudden, illogical, or non.
You can take your time.
I'm trying to think of the right words to use without getting too crazy. When the government makes sudden changes to policies without really being able to let the people know what's happening with those policies, that disrupts supply, which creates price problems. You're either an oversupply because you can't get your product out, or you're an undersupply because you can't get your product in, and that creates volatility in the market that's not good for anyone. It might be good for somebody for a short period of time where they're able to take advantage of a sudden price increase and they're sitting on a lot of inventory. It may be bad for a manufacturer who is buying just in time and suddenly he's buying off of a CRU index and his price went up drastically and now he can't pass that price on to his competitors. It doesn't help in the overall long term. You need consistent policy that is communicated from the government sources that are going to implement these, and they're logical and people can draw a string to them. But right now, I think you're seeing some of those supply issues and price issues because of the sudden and whimsical tariffs that are being put in place.
Would you say it shows a lack of knowledge of this industry in particular rather than the entire economy?
No, I think it more, again, we're getting into more, I think it might be that some people have abilities to talk to certain people who know more about steel than other abilities, and what might be able to drive that decision better. Steel was obviously, I mean, 2015, what China was doing was not fair. And I go to a fairness standard a lot of times. It's not an equal playing field. But changing quotas in certain countries in midstream, having boats turned around in the water, those things create instability in the market that just raise the prices that manufacturers are going to have struggle to push on to others.
Well, the 2015 tariffs were definitely a huge factor in the industry. Much like more recently and much less political and for the most part, the COVID pandemic driven many industries to a screeching halt, requiring a lot of bailouts, a lot of support. How have you seen the industry react to COVID as we're getting into the real dog days of it now? You know, we might be seeing the end of the tunnel. We are getting vaccines. It looks like there might be new strains, but it seems more controlled now. How has the industry weathered this storm, in your opinion?
I think the steel industry did a very good job considering a lot of the usage, especially in North America. I can speak to more of the usage and demand. It's tied to more consumerism, and when you have people out of jobs and unemployment rates really high, that can create supply issues. Right now, currently though, the sudden price increases, the allotments, I can't remember what we saw the other day, like a 20% month over month increase for the last 3 months, 4 months, highest it's ever been, seems a little excessive.
And not to get too personal, but I know you've had family members that have been tested positive. Um, how are you holding up personally in all this?
Um,
If you don't mind my asking, of
no,
course.
no, I'm pragmatic enough about, and again, being in the nuclear program, you do get a fair amount of biology in some of the classes that you have to take to become a nuclear operator. Um, I understand the biology behind this a little bit more and the risk factors. We're pretty cautious at work. Masks, we had testing today. We're testing everybody at the office once a week. So 62 people line up and get tested every week to make sure that we're being as safe as we can. I had somebody come in last week and disinfect the whole plant with a microbial spray that's supposed to prevent viruses from being able to attach to surfaces. So we're trying to be as proactive as we can to make sure, again, the people are the key. How safe do you make the people is how safe your product is and how you can continue your operation. The last thing I want is the health department to come in here and say, you didn't do everything you could do. We're going to shut you down. And LA is kind of a war zone right now, and it feels that way. Anytime you can drive 20 miles without touching your brakes, it's kind of scary in LA. There's something wrong. You can feel it when you drive. So our goal is to protect the employee, and protecting the employee and their families, we protect the company.
It's a very pragmatic and ethical way to view the problem, and it's a lot better than many companies have reacted to it. And it seems like from charting the conversations I've had since the pandemic, this the steel industry has done a lot to tamp down and be safe.
I also think for the most part, the steel industry is a mature business. There's not too many people starting a brand new steel company, whether it's a manufacturer, a punch press operation, a distribution. Maybe a broker comes here or goes there, but that's not the same. They're usually coming from an industry. They're not just going to say, "Hey, I'm going to be a broker today." Um, Steel mills are being started only by seasoned operators who know exactly what they're doing, and they're usually public companies that have got a lot of thought behind it. I think the people in our industry are anchored in the 1950s and 60s mentality of protecting the employee. I think that's the difference of what you see in the steel industry than you might say in the garment industry. And not picking on the garment industry, but in LA, that's been one of the harder hit industries.
Rob Moeck coming after the garment industry here on this episode of the EOXS
Um,
podcast.
I think that it's just most of my peers, most of the people that I talk to, we care drastically about the employee. And that's why we offer healthcare for everybody. Um, when I got here, 100% of the healthcare was paid for by the company for employee and family. We've had to change that a little bit because the healthcare costs keep going up, and it's a huge expense. But that's the way that we've always viewed the employees and their families, is they're the most critical component to what we do.
Um,
And I don't think I'm alone.
it's somewhat off topic, but do you work with a provider, or are you using a self-funded model of of insurance?
A little bit of both.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we came up that's one thing I'll take credit for, is we did come up with a hybrid approach to self-funding a portion of a higher deductible for the employees while keeping the benefits the same, therefore being able to reduce our cost.
Yeah, just because I know benefits can really just continue to dwindle while the prices just go up as much as 20% every year with some of the big providers. So it's a problem that a lot of companies are having to tackle at different stages right now.
Yeah, and that's one of the issues that you can get into with, like, the price of steel. So you have other areas that aren't directly related to your key components of your cost of goods. So you have the other ones, the soft costs that people don't really look at. Not only just your health insurance, but your regular insurance costs, building costs, electrical costs. If those things are all pushing upwards, you have a real issue with other costs that go up as well. So
Well, I think the self-funding also just helps you when you want to recognize that you have a diverse array of employees with different health needs and different uh, budgets, and it seems like a one size fits all mentality is just it's a waste of money and also ineffective in treating certain illnesses, especially depending on what area of the country you're in, like what healthcare is available to you within driving distance. Sorry, I'm getting very off topic.
No, no. Even in LA, it's where you live. The zip code you're in is different than what providers you have offered to you and everything else, depending upon the health plan you have. It's significant.
Yeah, but to go back, like we're coming up on time in a little bit, but I wanted to cover the COVID's effect on all companies and how they communicate with one another. You know, like this conference is only capable due to online technology. Meetings have been designated to Zoom. We've had to advance a lot in how we communicate digitally. Do you think that this pandemic has helped push the steel industry more online? And is that something that the industry really requires?
I hope it does. The industry is, but the problem with having people in it who've been in there for 20, 30, 40 years is they like the way it's done and they don't see change as necessary. Um, Change is always that's the one constant in life is change. So I'll tell a quick personal story. My great grandfather came over from Sicily. He knew horses, so he bought a horse and a cart, and he was delivering produce from the docks or from wherever in New York City. And he went to visit his cousin in Boston, and his cousin had just bought a motorized truck, and he sold the horse and the cart and bought a truck and drove it home, and his family almost killed him. So he was the first, this is the family legend, I don't know if it's true or not, but he was apparently the first truck driver in New York City. He was the first one with a actual motorized truck to carry produce. And then he found out quickly he could lease it to other people so that it could be ran 24 hours, and you can't do that with a horse. And suddenly he's a genius, and lots of money for the family for generations and generations. That change is scary to some people, even the people the closest to him. And the guy was a genius, in my mind. So when I look at change, you don't do change for change's sake, but you have to have an open mind about what is changing. When I got here to Bay Cities, the purchasing guy was like, oh, I told him to look at these 3 different brokers and so just get a quote from them just to see how we're doing. He's like, oh my God, these guys love you, Rob. They're 20% cheaper than the guy I've been using for the last 10 years. And I'm like, they don't love me. They're just telling you the market price. You've been overpaying for 10 years because you haven't gotten another quote. So, change is beneficial. Change has to happen. And I think with the steel industry, they're starting to see that technology is viable, can make things better. We have Zoom meetings here, even in the building. We don't get together. Even if my sales guy's office is right next to mine, we'll Zoom if there's 2 more people or 3 or more people in the meeting instead of all getting in one room. So things are changing. I think the old guard needs to see it a little bit differently. I think there's some fear in how things are manipulated. Still, people don't understand how the CRU really works. They don't understand some of the metrics and benchmarks that are out there. And some of the more sophisticated things aren't available for everybody, like hedging, and you have to have a certain amount of volume to be able to take advantage of some of those programs that I think the average steel guy can't. And therefore it's scary. Therefore technology is scary. Therefore we're not going to look at it.
Sorry, I'm just making a note right here that if I ever do get a time machine, I got to go back. And as Bob Bradley is coming off the boat from Sligo, I just got to take him aside. Hey, I know you want to go fall in love, but first you got to buy a tractor. It's going to change the game. And all right, I've just secured my family's future in an alternate timeline. But that type of innovation that early on, I have to admit, your grandfather sounds like a gutsy guy.
Yeah, and to me it wasn't, because that makes kind of sense. You see what it can do. You can see that you don't have to feed it. And yeah, you got to buy fuel for it, but it doesn't get sick. It doesn't require a lot of the things that a mechanical vehicle does. And you're not using a horse today. The guys here hate it because that's always my example for something. It's like, look, are you driving? Is anybody delivering in a horse-drawn carriage? No. So there are things will change. You can't tell me that trucks aren't going to get improved, or you're going to have drones delivering products to facilities. So we're always looking for the new innovation, the new technology that'll help drive us and make life better for our customers.
I think that's a great point to end on. And one final question to you would be, given all this rapid change that we've had to experience in the last few years, and specifically the last few months, do you see any kind of big innovations for the steel industry on the horizon that maybe haven't materialized yet?
I think They're going to be more in the forms of better production capabilities, getting away from the blast furnaces to the electric arc furnaces. I think you're going to see more consolidation on the producers end. I think sellers will always find unique ways to sell products, and whether it's an online marketplace, whether it's placing orders, I think the mills are going to have to buy into that too. It would be great if I could just pick up the phone today and order, 100 tons of 26 gauge galvanized and have it delivered. But the reality is that's 3 to 4 months out if I want the mill pricing. If I want to play a broker price, then maybe they have it in town, but now I can't secure my price to figure out what my raw material cost will be to get my sale price right. So there's a lot of things that have to work out what the lead time is going to be. The shorter the lead time gets to, I think you'll find some more innovation ways of creating a different seller's platform. And I think that's the combination between the two.
All right. Well, Mr.
And
Moeck.
I also think in the steel business, it's weird that the sales are personal. They're not as transactional as other things are. So the people we buy steel from, I've known, in some cases, I've known for 20 years. I've known since I first started in the business. And,
So
you know,
repeat customers?
the number of mills on the West Coast are finite. If you're buying domestic, you're buying from one of 3 sources in California. They're not a surprise. Some of them were at my wedding. Some of them I were at their weddings. So it's a little different feel. It's more family driven in that way. So you still beat them up. You still hold them accountable. Hey, here's the price from X mill from overseas. And, I need you to get more sharp with your pencil. But those are the sorts of relationships that you have that where buying wood, buying cardboard boxes, we don't seem to create those same relationships.
Well, I feel like that this is an industry that is reliable enough that parents do want to pass it on to their children. And I feel like that could add to that family element. Although there's a massive amount of people like yourself who very intelligent, come in, not sure this is the industry for them, like maybe from a different path in life, but take to it very strongly because they see the reliability in it. How long will it be till we stop building things out of steel? Stars will burn out of the sky. The moon will be 20 miles away further because it gets like a centimeter further every year. It'll be 20 miles further than it is now before we stop using steel, and probably not even then. So there's a comfort there.
Yeah, it's recyclable, which is a component that's easily recyclable. Must be recycled is a better way to put it. Where plastic isn't necessarily there, aluminum is still too expensive as a supplement for a lot of things, even though it's getting more and more into cars because it's lighter. But overall, yeah, steel doesn't seem to have a ready replacement. It is a threat to me, though. That's one thing that I keep looking in case somebody has developed a better and quicker platform that's cheaper than steel. But it's cheap, it's readily available, everybody can make it. It doesn't take a whole lot of technology to create it. It's easily formable. So,
Well, steel. It'll
yeah.
still be here. I just marketed it. You're welcome. All right. Well, Rob, thank you so much for your time. We really hope to have you back at some point. This was a very insightful conversation, and yeah, this is an absolute pleasure, sir. Any closing
Thank you. I
remarks?
appreciate it. This was great.
Yeah. All right. Well, then I'll read us out very quickly. This has been another insightful episode of EOXS's Stories on Steel. Thanks again to Rob for stopping by. And remember, whether galvanized or hot rolled, EOXS will provide a marketplace to take any steel business to the online sector. Thank you and good night.